Throughout the main line of Pokemon games, there's a total of 91 different caves. And saying that number out loud makes me realize that there are way more than I initially thought. However, that's besides the point, as a little over a month ago, I made a video in which I ranked every Pokemon town based on how likely I would be to live in it. So naturally, the next best thing to do is rank every cave in Pokemon according to how safe each one is to explore. Now this tier list will be broken up into 4 separate categories, with 100% safe being at the top, followed by maintain caution, meaning the area is relatively fine but just keep your head on a swivel, then by go with an expert, as it may be too risky to traverse the cave alone, so you'll probably want to call up your boy Hiker Knob from Route 25, and lastly, we've got completely stay away from the place. The 3 pieces of criteria I'm using to make these placements include how dark the cave is, how dangerous the wild Pokemon are, and how difficult it is to traverse each cave. It's also worth mentioning that I'll be looking at how each cavern appears in their original games, so for instance, no altering cave in Pokemon Emerald or Mount Coronet in Legends Arceus. With all that out of the way though, make sure to hit that sub button as it really does help out the channel, and without further ado, it's time to rank every cave in Pokemon based on safeness. Starting with arguably the most iconic, Mount Moon. The lighting in here is normal, but it consists of 3 floors and multiple ladders, so you could easily find yourself at a dead end. Not to mention wild mons such as Zubat and Paris, who yes aren't very threatening in Pokemon battles, could definitely harm a human being thanks to their poisonous tendencies. For those reasonings, Mount Moon gets things started in the go with an expert tier. It's just about impossible to get lost in Diglett's cave due to the straightforward path, but you would still need to watch out for the wild Diglets and Dugtrios, so this area lands in maintain caution. On the other hand, a rock tunnel wounds up in completely stay away. I mean, come on, it's pitch black, easy to get lost in, and there's still wild Zubats flying around who could severely mess you up. This is probably a good time to say that these rankings will also be based on the fact that you're traveling by yourself, meaning no Pokemon to help you out, and I guess we can assume that the average person can perform some HMs, such as pushing a boulder and swimming across a body of water. Anyways, I was originally going to stick the Seafoam Islands in the 3rd category, but after factoring in how cold it is, the difficult strength puzzle, and the fact that there's a raging current of water at the bottom, they sit right alongside Rock Tunnel. Unlike the Seafoam Islands though, Victory Road's strength puzzle isn't as complicated in my opinion, but you could still get turned around in here, especially if you're running away from Moltres, so going with an expert is your best bet. I'll place the Cerulean Cave in the bottom ranking thanks to the high-leveled wild Pokemon, as well as the maze that you come across halfway through. And let's be honest, arguably the strongest legendary resides at the bottom, so you're better off not even entering in the first place. Icefall Cave is relatively small, but there's one minor issue. A waterfall sits at the entrance, which no regular human would be able to scale. Then again, it's not like you have to go up it, since the entrance is also the exit, so I'm actually gonna place Icefall Cave in maintain caution. The Lost Cave is definitely a no-go. This is solely because if you don't understand the rock puzzle, then there's a good chance you'll never make it out. Even Bulbapedia backs up this claim. Rounding out Kanto is the Altering Cave. Although it's tiny and easy to map out, the abundance of Zubats holds it back from the top tier. Johto gets going with Slowpoke Well, which similar to Icefall Cave only has 1 entrance, so you shouldn't get lost. The Slowpoke are probably harmless, but there are Zubats, and I suppose you could pull a Kurt and tumble down the ladder, so Slowpoke Well will rest and maintain caution. As for the Dark Cave, you're better off staying away from it. It's another pitch black location, and trying to smash rocks or swim while basically being blind just to reach the other side doesn't sound like the greatest idea. Despite Mount Mortar's immense size, I'm actually just throwing it in the 2nd group. This is because it's very easy to just enter the cave, head east for a little bit, and reach the exit. Of course, there's Zubats to watch out for, but that's really it. Similarly, the Union Cave is big, but I don't think you would need some sort of guide just to go between Route 32 and 33, so 2nd tier it is. The same can't be said for the Ice Path, as the drop in temperature isn't welcoming, and sliding around on ice probably isn't the safest thing to do, so going with an expert would be recommended. I'll put the Dragon's Den in the 2nd group, since it's very small, but, you know, just don't bother the fire-breathing dragons that occupy the water, and you should be fine. The Whirl Islands, though, get dumped into completely stay away. Even just reaching the entrance would be a struggle, as each island is blocked by a whirlpool. and if you do manage to get inside, you won't be able to see. Oh, and also Lugia sits at the bottom, who most likely wouldn't be too fond of your presence. Mount Silver joins the Whirl Islands for just about the same reasons that the Cerulean Cave does. Along with the cracked wild Pokemon, you'd have to find a way to scale multiple walls, as well as persevere through the intense snowstorm near the top. So to me, it doesn't seem worth it to even take a step inside. I was really debating making Cliff Cave the first one to be 100% safe, as it's really just 2 ladders going up and down, but the presence of wild Pokemon barely holds it back. However, give it up for the Cliff Edge Gate, as it's the first cave deserving of the top tier. It's a straightforward path, there's no wild Pokemon, as long as you don't jump into the little pond, and even the workers at the desk seem to be pretty cool people. I seriously think a child could get through here just fine. Well, the main character is already 10 years old, which just proves my point. Hoenn begins with the Rusturf Tunnel, which is a simple straight line from Rustboro to Verdanturf. However, it belongs in Maintain Caution, as if you're not aware of the Whismers, then they may let out a screech that can cause a 24-hour headache. Granite Cave gets tossed in the 3rd category, as a majority of it is dark, but it's not as elaborate as something like the Whirl Islands. Meteor Falls reminds me a lot of Mount Mortar, as it is pretty large, but once again, you don't have to make many twists and turns to travel between Route 114 and 115, so maintain caution it is. The same goes for the Fiery Path, as it's even easier to get through. Just watch out for the poisonous Pokemon in there, I guess. The Desert Underpass continues this trend, as you can easily make your way through the long corridor to collect the other fossil. I actually was gonna put this location in 100% safe, until I realized that there are wild mons here, which came as a surprise. Moving on to the Scorched Slab, a place that many people probably forget about, it does find its way into the top group. Remember, we're looking at its appearance in the Gen 3 games, meaning no Heatran or Wild Golbats, just a small room with TM11 Sunny Day. The Shoal Cave is unique with its constant changing of its tides, so it's definitely worthy of going with an expert, or you could very possibly get stuck deep in the cavern. The Cave of Origins joins the rest of the dangerous ones in the bottom tier. Wild Golbats, Pitch Darkness, and a legendary at the bottom. Need I say more? Seafloor Cavern is actually close to the Maintain Caution group, because if I'm not mistaken, the only reason a legendary is there is because of the evil teams. However, I'll slide it into go with an expert solely due to the fast currents inside, as well as the fact that it's under the ocean, making it hard to reach. The Marine and Terra Caves are unique, as they don't have a set location. Nonetheless, they do play home to Kyogre and Groudon respectively, so I wouldn't go near them. The same can be said for the Nameless Cavern, Fabled Cave, and Gnarled Den. I mean, come on, you're asking to get pummeled by a legendary. Surprisingly enough, Victory Road also lands in the 4th tier, as the bottom floors are completely dark, and the average human couldn't even make it through thanks to the waterfalls. Fortunately, Hoenn ends with 2 peaceful areas that are 100% safe, the Mirage Caves and Artisan Cave. The most difficult part about reaching the Mirage Caves is hoping you see them in the first place. If you do though, there's 0 wild Pokemon to worry about. And the Artisan Cave, albeit a bit more complicated, only features wild Smeargles, who can't do anything with Sketch if you don't battle them in the first place. Hopping over to Sinnoh, the Ravaged Path, Orberg Gate, and Orberg Mines only get held back from Tier 1 due to Zubats occupying the places. Wayward Cave finds itself 1 group lower though, as the darkness, along with the long corridors that lead to dead ends, make it easy to get lost in. See, even Bulbapedia agrees with me. I really wanted to throw the Maniac Tunnel in 100% safe, but I just couldn't. Sure, it's really easy to pass through, and the only mons around are Geodude and Hippopotas. But then again, Hippopotas is a hippo, and have you seen what those things can do in real life? Iron Island consists of relatively strong wild mons, and you could easily go down the wrong staircase, only to realize that there's no way to progress. So going with an expert is the smart thing to do. Mount Coronet is an interesting case, because if we're talking about the path between Route 207 and 208, I would put it in Maintain Caution, but looking at Mount Coronet as a whole, it just barely remains in the 3rd group, as the rest of the area can be extremely tough to get through thanks to fog, snow, and having to scale walls. Sinnoh's Victory Road joins the ranks of Hoenn's for the same reason. You're unable to swim up the waterfalls on the bottom floor. If you discover Turnback Cave, you're better off turning back. See what I did there with the name and stuff? What am I doing? But for real though, a dense fog covers the area, and if you don't understand the pillar puzzle, then you're cooked. Oh yeah, and Garatina's there too. Over on Postgame Island lies Stark Mountain, which is pretty big, but the entrance is the same as the exit. If you ever get lost, just go back the same way you came in. So for that reason, it only rests in Maintain Caution. Now for the Underground, in which I'm just going to group the various caves and caverns into one ranking. It's really no different than any other cave with wild Pokemon, but because of the immense size, I'd say go with an expert. Moving over to Unova, we've got the Wellspring Cave, which I'll stick in the second tier. Chargestone Cave is filled with electricity, on top of the normal dangers of going in a cave, so no question you'd want to go with an expert. The Mistralton Cave earns a place in the bottom group, as it's entirely dark, and the legendary Swords of Justice member Cobalion resides at the end. Twist Mountain is another intriguing scenario, as I would only place it in tier 2 if we were going off of its appearance in the winter, since it's much easier to locate the exit during that time. However, let's assume that we're looking at Twist Mountain during the spring, summer, or fall, so a guide is definitely recommended in order to not get lost here. Although the victory roads from the two Unova games are different, I'm going to stick both in going with an expert. They each contain multiple different paths, and you gotta make sure you don't accidentally slide down the mountain at certain points. Additionally, I'm pretty sure any of the areas that feature the use of Flash or Waterfall are completely optional, meaning you would be able to make it through. Challenger's Cave and Reversal Mountain are two caverns you probably shouldn't bother visiting, but for separate reasons. You can't see where you're going in Challenger's Cave, and couple that with some high-leveled mons, and it's not a good combination. Reversal Mountain, on the other hand, slightly differs between Black and White 2. In Black 2, it continuously experiences eruptions, while in White 2, the mountain has remained dormant for a long time. Despite that, there's still magma hanging around inside, making Reversal Mountain a dangerous spot. The Giant Chasm follows suit because, you know, Kyurem's right there, while Seaside Cave lands in Maintain Caution. It's not big at all, and on the first floor you can easily spot the 3 exits. Unova's first and only 100% safe cavern comes in the form of the Cave of Being. Yes, you do see the Lake Guardians inside, but that's only because you're the champion. So the average person would be fine checking out this empty room. The Clay Tunnel finds its way to the 3rd tier, as it's relatively expansive and you don't want to accidentally stumble upon the Reggies, so calling up the dude whose name is in the title of the cave would be a smart idea. Topping off Gen 5 is the Relic Passage, which fits right into Category 2, while the Chargestone Cavern joins its counterpart for just about the same reasons. Heading over to Kalos, the connecting cave is incredibly small, but according to Bulbapedia, it's known for hordes of Zubats, so I'll barely keep it in tier 2, but maybe go in with a little extra caution. The same goes for the Glittering Cave, while the Reflection Cave lands in go with an expert. It's similar to something like Mount Moon in that it has multiple floors, and the Pokemon on the ceiling could pounce on you at any moment. Believe it or not, I'm sticking the Frost Cavern in Group 4. I didn't think I'd be doing this, but apparently the thick snow and fog causes people to see illusions. Not to mention, the freezing temperatures don't help, so I'd recommend keeping your distance. Kalos' Victory Road finds a spot in Tier 3, as it's extremely elaborate, but although some waterfalls are present, they're not required to make it through. The Sea Spirit's Den is an almost identical situation as the Cave of Being. This is because you only encounter the legendary birds in here after seeing them 11 times in the wild. So just don't do that, and you'll be 100% safe heading into here. Closing out Kalos is the Unknown Dungeon and Terminus Cave, both of which you're better off not entering, as Mewtwo and Zygarde wouldn't be very pleased. Alola joins the party, starting with Verdant Cavern. You can see the 2 exits right off the bat, however there is the Totem Pokemon chilling in the back, so similar to the connecting cave, proceed more cautiously than usual. The Seaward Cave, which I honestly forgot was a thing, and Diglett's Tunnel will join Verdant Cavern, but Mount Lanakila is a different story. The long climb and cold climate isn't a great start, and then you've got those massive rocks that you have to push out of the way. Yeah, these aren't your little baby boulders from Kanto. Because I'm generous, I'll keep Mount Lanakila in Group 3, but you better hope the expert that you go with has some strong team members to help out. Last up is 10 Karat Hill, which will be placed in Maintain Caution. Galar's mainland only holds 2 caves, the Galar Mine and Galar Mine number 2. Because it's so easy to stick to the main path and find the exit, they merge into Category 2. By the way, could Game Freak really not have come up with a better name for the second mine? Anyways, the caves in the Sword and Shield DLCs are pretty much the same. None of them are too complicated, and they just have wild mons roaming around. minus the max lair, of course. If you're not familiar with it, it's the location of Dynamax Adventures, meaning upon going inside, you'll be face to face with giant beefed up Pokemon. The likely result is that you won't make it out, so completely stay away from the place. Hopping over to Hisui, the Orboro Tunnel drops into Maintain Caution for the same reasons the rest of the caverns are there. However, the Seaside Hollow gets bumped up to the top tier. It's a small location that doesn't have any wild mons, and as long as you don't activate Request 66, Manaphy and Phione won't appear. Then again, could those two really cause a lot of harm anyways? The Stone Portal is an interesting case, as it doesn't feature any Pokemon, but the cold weather technically means it's not 100% safe, so it'll slide into Maintain Caution. Finishing off Hisui is the Ancient Quarry and Primeval Grotto, both of which are small areas but do have wild mons, so you already know where they're ending up. And finally, we've reached the most recent region, Paldea, which also holds the least amount of caves. The first two, being the Inlet Grotto and Alfornata Cavern, aren't too special, so Tier 2 it is. The other pair of caverns includes the Area 0 Depths and Under Depths. This landmark is strictly off limits to most people, even including the students participating in the treasure hunt, as Director Clavel claims that it contains hazardous landscapes and aggressive Paradox Pokemon. I know listening to teachers at school isn't the coolest thing to do, but in this scenario you're probably better off accepting the fact that this place is a no-go. And with that, we have ranked every cave in Pokemon based on how safe they are to explore. I'm not very shocked that a majority of caves ended up in the more dangerous tiers, since this is Pokemon after all, so the wild isn't the safest place to be. Then again, there were more 100% safe caverns than I thought there'd be. Definitely let me know what areas I should rank next, but for now, I hope you guys enjoyed, have a great rest of your day, and until next time, deuces!